Cops of Reddit, what is the most stupid criminal you have ever met? Old roommate was / is a cop. He came home to tell me an ATM was robbed after hours for $15,240. The next day the man who robbed the ATM deposited $15,240 into his personal account at the bank he robbed the night prior. I'm a 911 dispatcher in Florida. Sometimes confused or drunk people knock on the wrong door or try to get into a house thinking it's theirs, but it isn't. It's an honest mistake. But the homeowner is rightfully very afraid, thinking they are about to be robbed or worse. Well, I had this kid, must have been in his early 20s and clearly stoned, call me going absolutely crazy that someone is trying to kill him and take his property and rape his girlfriend, blah blah blah. I send units code 3 to this guy thinking it's a burglary in progress. Turns out the guy ordered a pizza and forgot about it. Scared the delivery guy half to death. I knew a guy who got busted selling weed. He went to his hearing at the court and went through the metal detector with an Altoid tin full of ecstasy pills in his pocket. It set off the metal detector. Sheriff's deputies searched him, found the pills, and arrested him on the spot. My mom's cousin was a bank robber. The time he got caught, he went into a bank, scoped the place out, left to go back to his bike. This MF robbed banks on a king bike. He put the mask on, robbed the bank. Police see the tape, see that bank robber was wearing same exact clothes as guy who left less than a minute before. And that was that. My ex stole a car and went to pick up his friend at the police station in the stolen car. He parked right in front of a cop. The cop ran the plates and escorted him into the building. Next day, he was on the news as the most stupid criminal in town. Edit. A lot of people are asking me why I dated him. Well, he never told me that. One day, I decided to Google his name, and I found the article. Learn from me, ladies and gentlemen. Google your partner's name. You never know what they are hiding. And yes, best thing I did was break up with him. Mistakes were made. Took a vehicle burglary report where the victim found a driver's license sitting on her driver's seat that the suspect must have left behind. Seems damning, but if he had any criminal smarts he would just say his license was stolen and the thief must have dropped it while breaking into this new victim's vehicle. Without any other evidence, the case would have gone nowhere. The next day I take a report at a church that was a couple of blocks away from the vehicle burglary. This guy stole the video cameras from the building. He must have thought the footage came with the camera, because when we checked the video, there was a high definition close-up of the suspect's face as he removed the camera. Good evidence, sure, but I still didn't know who the guy was until I looked at the license I collected the day prior and saw it was the same exact guy. Every day I see a big black SUV with sheriff written on the side parked in the driveway across the street. I don't know if the guy is the sheriff or works for the sheriff, but one night I wake up to a dozen sirens outside. Turns out some idiot tried breaking into Sheriff Dude's house while he was home and his vehicle was right freaking there. My dad is a cop, and I remember that he called me one night and said that he wanted to tell me how glad he was that I'm not as stupid as the guy he arrested that night. An idiot high schooler was caught stealing alcohol after his fake ID was rejected. His fake ID said he was born in 2001, 3 years younger than he actually was. Poor guy couldn't work out why his ID didn't work. My dad recommended that he pay better attention in math class. Can't go into too much detail, but kid, 14, shot another kid, 15, in the leg after a fight in their apartment complex. The victim is able to describe the gun the shooter used in detail. We get shooter's name from another kid who knows him from school. My partner looks up his Instagram, and would you believe it, there he is posing with the gun described to us exactly. Social media is a treasure trove of wannabe gangsters incriminating themselves. Went to a job of 2 males attempting to break into a car. Job description said they had been at it for at least an hour. Got there and the car was theirs. They had apparently locked themselves out. Checks confirmed it did belong to one of the person's mum. On their person was stolen mail and heaps of phones and new stuff in boxes in the car, so they got arrested for theft anyway. Ended up that the driver's door they had been trying to break into was the only locked door out of the 4. Was unlocked everywhere else the whole time they were there. Teen gets fired from Red Lobster, returns to rob same restaurant that night. They refuse to give him money from register, so he grabs charity coin box, muscular dystrophy or similar, and then he leaves on bicycle. I go to find him, and see coins scattered about, follow trail off same which leads me to him hiding in bushes at a church. Bicycle was leaning up against the bush he was in. Edit. Just to clarify, because of comments below, I was a police officer that arrested him, not a Red Lobster employee. From the local newspaper. 2 young men in a pickup truck on a back road stopped a courting Amish couple in a buggy and told the couple to give them all of their money. Spoiler, the Amish don't generally have money. They do have good memories, though, and told the cops the license plate number. The inept criminals were locals too, and should have known better than to try and rob the Amish. We had an inmate that would constantly call Crime Stoppers on his contraband cell phone and try to get them to give him the reward if he confessed to his crimes. He did this several times a month. Not a cop myself, but about 10 years ago I got held up and robbed by a group of 3 guys with knives. All they wanted was the money in my wallet, so me being the smart guy not wanting to mess with knives just obliged. At the end of the ordeal he put the knife to my throat and said, if you ever tell the cops my name is redacted I will slice your throat right now. So I went home, called the cops, told them where it happened, and gave them the name the guy told me. The name instantly rung a bell with them, since the guy had come into contact with the police in the past. Cops went to the spot where I was robbed, and they were laying an ambush for a new guy to appear. They could instantly identify the guy he was arrested, and that's about it. Happened in the Netherlands. Don't know his sentence or anything. I went to a domestic violence call where the woman claimed her husband hit her. When I asked her how it happened, she told me he couldn't provide the kind of life she wanted him to give her. She stated since he had a heart attack and got lupus he wasn't working, so she decided she should start inviting some friends over to have sex with her for money. Mind you, she's telling me, a fully uniformed officer, all of this. She says he should act as the person who handles the money for her, that is her pimp. She then calls someone to come over and tells her husband that after she gets paid for the sex he should hold the guy at knife point and take the rest of his money. She said he refused to help her with this, so they got into an argument. He pushed past her to get out of the apartment. She claimed that was the assault she called me for. I asked her if she understood she just admitted to planning a felony crime. She looked shocked that planning a prostitution and robbery was wrong at all, and did not get why I wasn't arresting her husband for trying to remove himself from her stupid plan to get them both arrested. Edit. Thanks for the silver, this is my first one. For all of those asking if I arrested her, I did not. The husband is a real hero here. Due to him refusing to be involved in anything, this plan of hers never made it off the ground. If the John had actually been invited over, I could have arrested her for an offense. I did write a report and passed it along to the robbery and vice units, as well as notifying my supervisors. Best I could do that night was separating them. I drive the husband across town to remove him from the situation. The penal code in each state differs slightly on what charges are considered arrestable while still in the planning stages. This wasn't something I could arrest on, mainly due to not having a direct victim I could point to. Basically because this was a what if scenario, it would be the equivalent of me mumbling to myself, I should punch that guy in the face. If the John had been invited over and or I had gotten the name for the possible John, I could have arrested her for it. TLDR, being stupid and making stupid plans isn't a crime. Crimes require victims. Not me, but my buddy is a cop and told me about this one kid in particular he dealt with for years. No cleverness to him. Numerous times he walked into his neighbor's garage in broad daylight and just stole his bike. Constantly stole from stores in plain view, even the occasional minor assault or burglary. He always got caught. Like had never gotten away with any of his hundreds of crimes, but because he was a minor there were never any real repercussions. A few days before he turned 18, my friend and another officer went to his house to basically remind him that if he does anything after that he will face real punishment as an adult and he'll get 0 breaks. Like a last-ditch effort to be helpful. 2 days after his 18th birthday he's caught committing an armed robbery. Pretty sure he's doing a few decades behind bars. XLEO here. So I get a call a couple years ago to a lady who says she is being threatened. I respond to a very rural area and she shows me her cell phone and it is a chainmail text from an unknown number. The message showed a picture of a girl with a gag in her mouth and she is looking at the camera and holding a sign with both hands that said help. The text of the message stated she was in Amsterdam and she didn't forward the text to 10 people and look what happened to her. I explained to the lady that it was a hoax and explained what a chainmail message was. She refused to believe me and became argumentative. When I offered to contact Interpol for her, she did not know what that was, that wasn't good enough, and just kept saying that girl needed help. I asked her if she knew the girl and she said no, and she believed the girl tried to send her the message using any made up numbers she could instead of contacting anybody she knew. My reasoning was once again shot down. And she said again that the girl needed her help. I remember driving away and the lady screaming at me that I needed to help that girl. I responded with a single no over my PA as I quickly sped away. Both of those women were never heard from again. Now forward to 10 people. Not a cop, but worked at a 7-Eleven in a rough part of Chicago. Had 2 guys come in and ask for 2 bottles of Grey Goose. I asked for their IDs, they handed them over, and I grabbed the 2 bottles from behind the counter to ring them up. They proceeded to grab the bottles and book it out of there, leaving their IDs on the counter. I called the police. They came in asking for a description of the thieves and I handed them the IDs. Cops were in disbelief at the stupidity, left and went to the address on one of the IDs that was about 2 blocks away. About 15 minutes later they walked in with the 2 guys and bottles of Grey Goose. Poor guys didn't even have a chance to open them. I confirmed it was them, didn't press charges, took the bottles of Grey Goose back, and went on with my overpass shift. So I'm sitting in the station, doing paperwork. I'm looking out of the window, and a few yards away is a bus stop. A young lad is smashing the glass of the bus stop as a way of showing off to a couple of girls. So I sigh, walk about 20 yards over to him and arrest him. Another time, a lad had just broken into a pharmacy and stolen some drugs, sleeping tablets, which he started taking, maybe to hide the evidence. Who knows how these people's minds work. There's a foot chase, which gets slower and slower and slower. I ended up just walking slowly behind him. The guy fell asleep while I was booking him in. Not a cop, but I've got a pretty good story. Once, when I went to the grocery store, there were a few officers inside, getting statements from some of the staff. Apparently some guy had dropped a gallon-sized Ziploc bag full of crack on the floor while he was walking out. Staff members noticed it right away and called the police right before the guy comes back into the store, demanding that the staff return his crack. He was still arguing with and threatening them when the police walked in the door. There was a kid who sold drugs on my floor of the college dorm who wasn't the brightest. One night he was driving back to the dorm and a police car comes behind him and turns on their lights. His dumb stored all of his drugs in his car and assumed they were pulling him over for possession. He proceeds to drive through a red light and pull into the dorm parking lot to hide. Mind you, his car was covered in bumper stickers, had a kayak rack, and a vanity plate to top it all off. The parking lot only had one entrance and exit too. Apparently he thought the police car wouldn't go through a red light to follow him. Long story short, they were just going to warn him for having a taillight out and nothing more. Instead, he ended up in the local jail and expelled from the college. The funniest part is that his ledger of all transactions and the dollar amounts, products, and buyers was also right there in his car. He was one stupid criminal.